English, and well, since you say languages, I'm gonna probably suppose German. It's a possibility.
What makes you think that he can speak those languages?
Basically, I mean, I don't mean to sound, I guess, like I'm putting everything on, the skin. I mean, it is what it is, but I mean, usually he has Anglo-Saxon features, so what comes to mind right away is English, more likely German, but, based on how he's speaking, English is his dominant language.
English? Yeah, he seems like his main language is English.
Mm-hmm. So what is it that makes you think that?
His eyes, the way he looks, the hair, the blonde hair.
Obviously English. I don't know, maybe he has Spanish blood in him. Maybe he speaks Spanish at home. I know a lot of fair people that speak Spanish.
I've never met anybody who thought I spoke Spanish. Yeah. It's always the opposite. Nobody would think I speak Spanish. So people, if people are having a private conversation, they'll always speak Spanish. If they know Spanish, they'll start, and it's kind of I know what you're saying. I don't really say anything, but I just kind of ignore it. It shouldn't be like that. But it's also I've done it to other people here on the border. I go sometimes to play soccer at the rec center here at UTEP, and I'll be speaking with some people in Spanish or whatever, and then somebody who looks like they would know Spanish, I start talking to them, they're they don't know Spanish. Or it's happened to some of the students from Brazil, and I'm not sure if they speak Spanish or not, and I start talking in Spanish and they don't know Spanish. And so I've actually done it to other people, which is kind of I'm more careful now when I assume people speak a language just because of the way they look. I was born here, my parents were missionaries, so when I was about almost 1 year old, I moved down there to central Mexico. And so I grew up there as a kid, learning both languages, English and Spanish. I'm more comfortable speaking English, especially since I live in the US now and I mainly speak English. And like I said, I was taught school, I was homeschooled, so I learned everything in English, and so all the terms and a lot of words, I never use them in Spanish, so I'm not as comfortable.
But I think it's just easier, because that's my parents' first language, to speak to us in that language. And so in our house, it was just English. And even when I got older, even being around others that spoke Spanish, even I don't know, with friends or whatever, I just speak to my family in English and switch back to Spanish. It was always
Yeah, the same happens to me. Like I say, my stepdad is from Oregon, so at the house I have hard Spanish, mi mamá diciendo cabrones o chingao, the hard stuff, y luego mi padrastro usa hablando en inglés. I have ese contraste de lenguaje bien fuerte. Por eso me gusta, me atrevo a, because I'm actually talking to my mom and to switch to talk to my dad, or even translate, or be that connection between them. A pesar no me gustaba el inglés. I didn't like to speak English. I was nah, I'm comfortable. I came to this country when I was 12, so I was fluent in Spanish. I knew everything. I mean, the basics in Spanish. But it wasn't until I get to my 20s when I realized that I needed to be able to handle English, to embrace the language more. Yo vengo a este país y vengo ya con un idioma, el español, y luego tengo que aprender el inglés. Y yo siento que tengo un mindset, una mentalidad, a set of rules que yo tengo que quebrarlas. Tengo la idea como ahorita, we're doing here, we're breaking the rules. Y tengo esta idea, siempre que es con esta idea de que tengo que romper esas barreras, el lenguaje, ¿no? El quebrar las reglas. El lenguaje tiene reglas. You speak English, you speak Spanish. Antes se decía que en este país, estás en Estados Unidos, you need to speak English. Y para mí era como el no quebrar esa barrera, ¿no? El quebrar, como tuve ese cambio, yo creo, no sé, como que para mí también fue siempre romper las reglas. That's my mindset. Y eso me identifica. Y siento que a gente de la frontera people who speak various languages, even 2-3 languages, creo que lo identifica mucho. Es gente muy liberal, gente que le gusta quebrar las reglas y aprender y abrirse a otras culturas, a otras maneras que la antropología, otras maneras de ver el mundo.
My upbringing was a little different. I grew up in a predominantly English-speaking family, and when I questioned my parents, because a lot of my friends spoke only Spanish, and so it was hard for me to communicate because I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. Not even my grandmother or great-grandmother ever spoke to me in Spanish. They spoke to me in choppy English, but English. Well, for me, it was a different story. They did it as a defense mechanism. My parents grew up here in El Paso, and during the 50s, they would play outside. You know, they came from poor backgrounds. So they lived in a poor neighborhood. So their idea of a good time was to be outside playing tetherball, throwing the basketball around. And every day when they were there on the corner, they were getting harassed by immigration. And my parents were American citizens. They were born here. My grandmother was born here in New Mexico. So I'm like 4th generation here. And so the only reason that they forbid us and made us speak English is because they didn't want us to suffer the same fate. So they did this as a defense mechanism. It wasn't that we were ashamed of it. They wanted us to have a better life. In a way, I kind of felt after I grew up that I was missing something. Because to me, communication is a big deal. You know, now that I have to teach classes, if I can't communicate with my students, then I'm at a loss. And so I try to teach my kids, you know, once I had them, you know, you need to know both. If you're going to communicate, you need to know both. Because I think that not knowing both, that lack of communication is why I think there still exists a little bit of animosity. You know, we should be all one people, but we're divided in that sense. And I think that language plays a big part of that.
Me gusta lo que dices, es más el lenguaje. It's like our culture has been banished, erased or hide or hold, como dijeron, it has been on a hold. Pero no hay nada que podamos hacer con eso. It's the way that.
And I'm proud to be an American. I don't want anybody to think I'm not.
I mean, I'm not an American, but I'm proud of being here in the United States, working and doing what I'm doing. And I'm not even an American.
I guess I want to be an American without sacrificing who I am.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
My name is Jose Valadez. I'm a student at UTEP, majoring in psychology, minoring in Chicano studies. I'm an immigrant with my mother. When we came here, the reason that English was my first language was because she was either working, mopping, doing odd jobs. But I would hang around a lot with the kids from the people that would hire my mom. So I started speaking more English than anything. There was a point with the relationship between me and my mom that was very difficult because I didn't understand her, or I couldn't communicate with her. So that was very frustrating. Spanish didn't come maybe when I was probably 6, 7. Hearing the elders talk, of course, sitting around them, trying to, for me, English was, I learned it because of who I was, my environment. When I would get home, the Spanish, my mom didn't speak enough to me because I didn't spend it with me because I didn't spend enough time with her. So when it was time to interact with my mom, it was difficult. There was just more sign language, more hand gestures, like do this, do that. And that's the way I communicated with my mom at the beginning when I was a child. I think what I felt is it felt that I was disconnected from my mother. And even to presently, you kind of don't find yourself. You're lost. You don't know if you belong. I mean, if you're an American or you're a Mexican, I just was in limbo. That was my experience with my mom. I think it's something inside that we want to do. I hope that maybe, Professor, if I'm wrong, but it's not that we care too much about what other people see, because we know what we have, what we've been through, we've lived life. But I think I'm with a professor. Yeah,
it's a desire that I have inside me that I need to know this.
And
I couldn't do it when I was little. I wasn't raised this way, and there's something missing. There's something missing there, and so it's going. Not that it's going to complete me, but I think that I would feel.
Yeah, you feel whole. You feel.
There you go.
I agree. You feel. I'm with a professor.
You feel whole. Exactly.
I wanna learn, and like she's saying, Day of the Dead. I've done projects. I want not to feel, but I want to really actually experience and learning. Maybe for the professor and for myself, maybe learning Spanish will give us that full experience of being Mexican, of being connected to our roots.
Exactly.
But a lot of people would always want to, or many people, not all people, but many people are probably like, hey, you don't need to do. But in actuality, it's
part of who you are.
It's part of who you are. It's part of, like Joel, I highly, even though I barely know him, I highly respect the fact that he is where I've wanted to be all my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's knowing the two language, being able to transition as perfectly. And well, that's one thing I spoke to you about when I barely met you. I was like, wow, all my life, not that I forgot because of knowing English, but you've already been
But
to.
it's a whole culture. It's not just a language.
Yeah.
Right. It's all the customs and all the traditions that we don't celebrate here.
Yeah.
It never really struck me as strange that like I would be around other people and I'd be talking to my family in English, or like my mom or my dad, and then I would switch back to Spanish and be talking to everyone else in Spanish. So it was just like normal for me until I would come visit the US, and then it was like, oh, nobody else speaks Spanish, but yeah.
Pero a veces sometimes we can be like very far apart, como muy separados, pero seems like we grew up with the same kind of background or context somehow, no?
Yeah.
And we don't seem to bother to do that, like switch right. Yeah.
I do it a lot.
Yeah.
I think for all of us, even me, I'm a Pocho.
I am.
I know more English. I've gone with family in Juarez, and sometimes I laugh because they're laughing, and I don't know what I'm laughing at.
I have to say, I have experienced this transition from monolingual to Pocho, then finally to bilingual. Pero yo me río de eso. I try to laugh about it because it seems logical that when you try to speak two different languages, that's going to happen. I mean, te vas a trabar y you're going to get confused and even put a word with a single letter al final de una palabra. O sea, para mí, I laugh about it. You know, I try to laugh about it. Un poquito, no tuve la misma experiencia que tú. Tal vez hasta la presión y todo, pero tuve una vida más libre. Mi mamá me dijo, bueno, si no quieres hablar inglés, no lo hables. Y luego después yo dije, no, I have to. I mean, I'm in this country. But I feel lucky. I was not born in this country, and I feel lucky that I was born in another country, and I was brought here, and I had that opportunity, que a lo mejor Joel me entiende, to transition or to incorporate another culture into one that you already have, una que ya tienes. Esa mezcla a mí se me hace muy. I feel proud of it. I feel, me trato de sentirme.
And I think I think that your experiences, I don't know if the professor will agree with me, I think those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very fun. We see what Joel said about just kids, and I don't like to. I'm trying not to have this Mexican or white or black, because it's just being discriminatory racism to me. But as Joel says, we were kids, and when you have that opportunity that he and Memo had, I think they're more at ease with it. If you see how confident, and me and the professor, we struggle because now we're trying to even into the culture, which, not that, I mean, there was protection reasons, which were, I mean, it's a good reason for her to be brought up like that. But now that we're trying to start, and I'm sure the professor's starting to transition, because I am, we're feeling the embarrassment.
It is embarrassing. Sometimes I feel ashamed that I don't know it, because the outside world does tend to try to make you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help how I was raised.
Yeah.
But I can do something now about it, should I choose to, and I've chosen to because I need to.
¿Qué te parece social class, mejor te digo, la clase social? La gente que habla muy propia, sin malas palabras. Sin el pinche, sin el güey, sin el... o incluso los campesinos, la manera que habla un campesino, el trabajador de la construcción, el paisa, palabras, la manera en que hablas también dice, incluso la gente te va a juzgar más allá, tal vez será la segunda, después de que te ven, te van a juzgar de cómo hablas. Bueno, tal vez por algún lugar lo escuché eso, seguramente, o lo leí por ahí. Pero no determina, porque el lenguaje puede cambiarlo. Yo lo cambié, yo lo transformé. No te determina, pero la gente sí te va a juzgar, te va a identificar con cierto grupo.
A barrier for me is because I don't know our native language. So now, as the professor says, now it's our turn to do something about it. And it's very embarrassing. I think, I don't know if the professor agree with, but even at times I don't feel I have an identity yet.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still in limbo. I remember I was talking to Joel saying, or to you as well, saying, hey, I want to retire in Mexico. After that week, I went to talk to my family, and they looked at me and they said, we need to take you further into Mexico because Juarez is the only place that I've gone. And we'll tell you right now, not to hurt your feelings, but you won't make it. I was shocked, but because I don't know how to be, I mean, Joel has lived there, and he knows how people can be nice, how they can be mean, like he knows how to navigate. And that's what my family was telling me, you won't know, especially, I'm Americanized and I'm an American, even though that, I'm still not a citizen yet, but my family told me blatantly, and not from here, they weren't trying to discourage me. I think what they were saying is, I won't know how to handle things. I don't think it's,
right.
it's not, I think people being mean, it's just, I would not know, and even though I'm a grown man, but to try to go back at my age and sit there and try to, it'd be like starting brand new is what they're saying. And I honestly, transactions or this, I don't even know. Sometimes when I go over there, I don't know. They tell me, oh, it's 1,600 pesos for $1. I don't know. So I usually give a little more or maybe less, and then they're, but it's not that I think they're being prejudiced. It's a barrier for me that I don't know anything from it.
And let me decir algo aquí. Let me decir algo. Your family was trying to protect you, just like en el caso de ella, ¿verdad?
I look at it
But
like that.
even though they were trying to protect you, that doesn't mean they no te hicieron un bien por decirte, don't speak Spanish. O sea, a veces, I think you mentioned it, dijiste, tratan de protegernos con algo, pero a la misma vez nos lastiman o nos hacen un daño.
Yeah.
They hurt us in a way.
You know, as somebody who's in school, who's teaching school, Chicano studies on top of it all, that's where my shame comes from.
Yeah.
That I'm teaching a subject and I'm teaching about all of the societal issues and the wrongs that were done to Mexican descended people when I myself cannot speak Spanish correctly. So yeah, there's a little bit of shame when you're a scholar and you feel like, God, you're supposed to know this stuff. Where I live now, it's not an affluent neighborhood, but back when my parents got married and they bought a home there, it was a white neighborhood. Okay, they were probably the darkest people on the street, to be honest. We went on family vacations. My mother made pork chops and meatloaf for dinner. We did not eat enchiladas. We did not. My dad even told her, I don't care what you serve me, but there better be beans on the plate. But this is how I grew up. I mean, there used to be a show in the 50s called Leave It to Beaver. That was my family. The Brady Bunch, that was my family. Those are the programs that we watched as children. We did not watch a Chavo del Ocho. We did not watch Mexican TV. for the most part, you might as well say I was white because that's pretty much how I was raised.
Since I moved back here to the U.S., at first it was kind of weird. Living in Mexico, I always thought of myself more as like an American. I was always the one that stood out. And then I moved to the U.S., and then the language here in the border specifically is even a little bit different than like central Mexico and the way terms are used and the way people speak. And so I don't know, I felt very different. It was very different, and even just like people in the U.S., like having those relationships with people, it was just different because like knowing Spanish or having lived in another country, like your culture, what you know, it was kind of hard to actually make relationships with a lot of people. Now at school, I have a lot of friends who are from Mexico and farther south, southern Mexico and stuff, and I'm really good friends with them, and it helps that I do know Spanish. And we just have a lot in common because of that, and where we grew up also, but just being able to communicate in the same language, it affects a lot how our relationship is.
I would have to say is that I see a lot of good things happening for Vaughn, you know, at this time in our country, because of what he knows, what he's going to be able to do for companies. I mean, he's just going to be able to navigate. I mean, it's going to be let's just not say very easy, but it's going to be a lot easier than it probably would be for someone who doesn't know the two languages. And it's not just him knowing the language. I mean, he can carry himself because he was raised over there. He is Mexican. You know, regardless if you look at the way he is Mexican. To me, he's Mexican. I would even say this, and not that I'm gonna put myself down, but he is more of the culture than I would be. But he is of the culture, and I say this in a happy way, in a good way. I'm very glad that he is what he chooses to be, who he hangs around with, but he is Mexican. I mean, that's how I look at it, and he'll be able to help a lot of people, and I'm sure that's what his education is for. You know, first for himself, but he's gonna do a lot of things.
If you know another language, you just have more understanding toward other people from other places, from other cultures and other languages. And so it is impactful, and it's helpful. Like, I can come to the US and learn things about Mexico and all this, but it's being able to communicate with those people and understand their story. It gives me both perspectives, and then I can come in the middle and like throw out all the prejudice or throw out anything like that, and know like really the relationship with people, it's very important. And just what you hear, say, on the news, like that, a lot of it's not personal. But when you know them personally and you know those people and you can communicate with their language, it just helps a lot. It helps you to understand and really sympathize with people.
I think the whole language thing is, in my opinion, is a tool for some of us. Like the professor says,
It's a little deeper.
it's deeper, and even in Joel's experience that I got to speak with him, he also has that desire to learn Alemán, German, and even for Memo, I'm sure he wants to get to a level in English that one day, that he will be, his character and charisma is it's awesome. But I'm sure that when it comes to time to be professional, he's gonna have to, he's gonna need to step up the English grammar, using bigger words, bigger vocabulary. So I honestly, I love both languages. I just want to learn one more than the other, which for me right now, I would like to learn more Spanish. And I have my mom, which is a great tool, a great resource, probably the best, coming from Guadalajara. And I need to jump on that now.
Pero definitivamente son las culturas mezclándose.
Yeah.
Es a crash, es un choque de culturas que está habiendo, y es lo que nos está enseñando que we need to be more open to this, because to this diversity of ethnic backgrounds, because it's happening right now.
It's everywhere.
And then we'll realize, I think we'll realize in doing that, we'll realize how similar we always have been.
Cuando hablas un lenguaje, estás hablando un mundo, la manera en que tú percibes un mundo. Tú escuchas. Cuando percibes, entra información por tu retina y se va al cerebro, ¿verdad? Y identificas ciertas líneas, bla, bla, bla. Cuando tú escuchas, es lo mismo, estás escuchando palabras, codificándolas, mandándolas al cerebro e interpretas.